God Talk Unfiltered.
I'm nervous. So this is a story that is unfolding right now, and it's a story that I feel a responsibility to share, and I haven't shared it with anyone other than my very close, tender circle. So thank you for listening. The story goes back to just last November of 2018. August, I went to Mongolia to study with shaman there, and I'm fascinated in ancestral healing and rituals from around the world. And while I was there, I learned lots of different ancestral healing rituals, and I was told by a shaman that I needed to work with my grandparents on my father's side because they had passed, but they haven't crossed over. Therefore, that they are ghosts and they're unwell and that they're grasping at me. And in order to help them transition, I needed to perform these rituals on their behalf. So I went home, and for 3 months, I poured milk and honey into the river, and I sang the prayers, and I made the food offerings, and I did all of the rituals that I was requested to do in honor of them. And then I touched base back with that shaman, and I had said to her, I was so honored to do that, and I felt so sad because my father would never know. I've been estranged from my father for 15 years, and these were his parents, which I did not honor when they passed because I had been estranged from them as well. So she had said to me, don't worry, it will trickle down, and he'll feel it. He doesn't have to know. So all of the rituals ended in January of 2019, and in April, my brother called and said, Dad has stage 4 cancer, and he's dying. So this is your last chance to see him if you would like to see him. Now it's been 15 years, and I didn't know what to do. I hadn't talked to him. I didn't have his phone number. I didn't know where he lived. But my brother still had communication with him. So maybe 3 weeks went by before I had the courage to find out where he lived, to fly out there. And in my heart, I put on all my armor. My childhood was very full of so much trauma, and that's to say it very gently. And so I was going out there with all my armor on, and to demand that this man crossed his T's, he dotted his I's, and he made sure his will was in order and that I didn't have to pick up the pieces because he owed it to me. He owed me that. So I pull up to a marina, and I call this man, who's my father, and I say, I think I'm at the wrong place. I'm at a marina. And he says, no, honey, I live on a boat. Oh. So my dad lives on this 40-foot boat. So I walk down to his boat. We sit on this tiny little table, and I'm scared, as I am right now, sharing, and I'm angry, and my little girl is protecting herself. And I sit across from this man who's dying, and he just starts crying and telling me how grateful he was that I was there. And my heart just bled open, and he apologized for everything that he's ever done to me. And in those tears, I forgave him fully, and I fell in love with him. I fell in love with my dying father in that moment. And so I left, not knowing what my next step was, but I knew that it was going to be love and compassion for end of life, because I have volunteered for hospice for the last 10 years, and who am I not to sit with my own dying father? I sat with these people, I didn't know their stories, nor did it matter, so who am I not going to forgive my own dad and hold his hand? So my dad lives in Seattle, and he was beginning chemotherapy to see if he could have some time. If he didn't do it, he had 3 to 4 months, and there was a 20% chance that he could buy more time. So I flew out there to support him, but I didn't realize I was his only support system. He lives alone, and he had no one to take him to his appointments. So as I'm sitting there with him during his chemotherapy, looking at this factory of everyone else getting their chemotherapy, I sat there and I talked to my father, and I described these healing rituals that I had done with his parents just previous, and I thought he was going to think I'm full of hoo-ha. And he said, thank you, and he cried. And then he asked what he could do, what we could do together to honor his parents. And I said, part of the healing is to go onto the land and cry our tears for them. And he said, okay. So after chemo, we went outside and we cried on the ground together for his parents that I had just done ritual with. Then my dad started sharing all about our ancestry and all about his father and his father's father, and my heart just blasted open, and I realized in these times that I spent with him that I come from him, this red-haired man that I hated, that I told myself I was better than, that I wanted nothing to do with, and I realized that I come from him and I love him and I forgive him, and forgiveness is gentle and forgiveness is simple, and love matters. And so for 3 months, I went back and forth every couple of weeks out there supporting him through his chemotherapy. In the meantime, I had a trip planned for Ireland, to my homelands, our motherlands, from which his parents came. With that same woman, I went to Mongolia with to learn some more ancestral ritual healing trainings to bring back here to my community. And I shared that with my father when I was out there, and he gifted me this envelope, and he says, "These are the ashes of Grandma and Grandpa, and they always wanted to go to the Irish Sea. Will you please take them? These are the grandparents that I worked with 6 months before that he didn't know." Of course, so I journeyed to Ireland. I took my grandparents and this envelope on my journey with me. I put them in the Irish Sea. I took some stones from the Irish Sea and I brought them back with me. Now, right before we went to Ireland, my dad found out that the chemotherapy was working and he qualified for a liver tumor removal. His colon cancer had migrated to the liver, yet he was going to be an operable case, which may bring him more time. He had a 20% chance that that would happen. And the day before I went to Ireland, I was in Seattle sitting with him in chemo, and he said, "This poison isn't what's curing me. It's forgiveness and it's love and it's you being here." So I went to Ireland, I came back, and then just this last Friday, my dad had that liver surgery, and I was with him for the week prior, and we had lots of conversation about death and dying because everyone else wants to tell him he's going to be okay, and the truth of the matter was he may not. Especially he has COPD, so anesthesia was already really risky, and he had to sign a lot of waivers, and we had to go fill out all of the information that there's no resuscitation, and we had to go over the facts, and we had to go over the bank account, and we had to go over the will, and we had to do it all. This man I hadn't seen in 15 years, who I love so much. So the night before, we sat down and we prayed, and together we prayed that he had a choice, that he either stay or leave, but it be his will. And so the next morning, the two of us went to surgery, and he pulled out of his pocket that stone I brought him back from the Irish Sea, and he asked if his mom and dad could come in surgery, and the nurse taped it to his hand. So we got to take his parents with him, who have been transitioned, who are now well, supporting him through the surgery. He came out of surgery. 2 hours later, the surgeon said everything went great except for we can't wake him up. 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours go by, and I'm waiting for him to wake up. And I asked to see him because if he's going to leave, I want to hold his hand. It's what I signed up to do. It's what my mission is. And so I go in there and I hold his hand. And he opens his eyes and he said, "I can't breathe, but I'm choosing to stay. Can you help me?" He has this big machine on, and he thinks he's on life support, and his eyes are wide, and he can't breathe. And so I texted all the women in Ireland and asked if we could breathe for him. So 14 women and I sat and breathed, and an hour later I got a message from the nurse that he had come back, and he's in his body, and he's in room 712. And I prayed in those moments that I held his hand, that if he wanted to leave, that he leave. And I prayed in those moments that he wasn't coming back for me, and that he was making a choice, and either choice was brave. And we talked about it the night before, that both choices are brave. And when he woke up, he said, "I'm sorry it took me so long. I had a choice to make. My mom and dad came. And it was really beautiful, and I really wanted to go, but I told them that we had a story to tell and that I had to come back. So this is part of the story that I'm here to help tell." And this was just last Friday, and today I spoke with him, and he's leaving rehab. And today he told me that pathology came back on his liver tumor, and they took out some lymph nodes, and they had to send it out to 3 different surgeons because they can't believe that there's zero trace of cancer in the tumor, and 0 of his lymph nodes have cancer. He's essentially in remission. 4 months ago, they said he'd be gone by now, and now he's in remission. And today he said, Love and forgiveness cures cancer. So this is our story, my dad and my story, but it's bigger than the two of us. It's bigger than just our little story, and he asked that I share it, so I'm sharing it now, and I hope to share it more, and thank you for listening.